Hi, this is Arjun Paliwal, Head of Research at InvestorKit, and I'm here joined by a client and good friend of ours, Ani. And in this discussion, we're just going to go through a little bit more about Ani's journey of scaling a profitable property portfolio, working closely with our team, and just the ups and downs, the learnings, the journey of everything in between. So, Ani, mate, thank you for joining.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
Mate, I wanna wind it back right to where it all began. Now, when you go back to, I guess, pre-working together with a team, you look at the journey of, I guess, what's gone well, what's not gone so well, and what makes you feel, hey, you know what, I want to build a team out and get professional support. Tell me what was going through your mind at that time.
Yeah, sure. So with my property journey, it all started sort of around 2013. That's when I made the first purchase. It was obviously hindsight's 2020. So looking back on it now, that was an absolute lemon. It's everything that you and kind of your peers discourage looking at. So that was a off the plan apartment in Melbourne, sight unseen. It was a 211. And it's just had a string of issues associated with that. And from a financing standpoint as well, because I was still, just entering the workforce back then, it's the structure hasn't really helped me as part of my longer journey. So that was the first one that I bought with my father, just to get my foot on the investment ladder. Fast forward then to property number 2, which I picked up in 2017. And by this time, I'd obviously done a little bit more due diligence. I'd started researching a little bit more about, the value of building up a team around you. And this is obviously before we met. So I was sold to the idea of working with a buyer's agent who dedicates their time and energy and effort into researching good properties and areas, really looking at areas outside your own backyard to invest. So that was property number 2. And that's done quite well. That was in Queensland, sort of between Brisbane and Sunshine Coast. That was a 422. And then, 2019 is really when my journey with InvestorKit started. So that was property number 3 in my portfolio. That's one we picked up in Adelaide, and the rest is history. Adelaide's done very, very well, thanks to you and the team. And the Adelaide one has done so well, in fact, that we were then able to use the equity growth in that to fund the purchases of properties 4 and 5.
Mate, I mean, on that journey, you talk about this trajectory and the journey of like, hey, the lemon to then understanding the power of the team to then having a couple going really well. I don't think I've asked you this question before, but I mean, if we go to the Adelaide journey and you've now come out the other side and you've got 2 separate buyers agents who've helped you, one that's helped you with the Brisbane in between that and Sunshine Coast, and now the Adelaide one. But then you have now the decision of going for the next, and you have these 2 properties. That has obviously, meant you've worked with us now for the next and the next and the next. But what was that defining moment for you that made you go, you know what, I'm going to stick with this buyer's agent who's purchased this property for us, and ride the journey out with them long term? What were some of the standouts for you?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, look, no discredit to the buyer's agent who supported me with that Queensland purchase. They were very professional, extremely helpful. But I think the real differentiator between that and the Adelaide purchase was obviously, getting to know you, understanding your work ethic, understanding your experience and genuine passion. I knew, we worked together for a little bit, and I knew that you had your own property portfolio and you were sort of putting your money where your mouth was. And I knew from day one, you understood the lending side of things. You understood obviously the lending, the financing and everything else, but your genuine sort of passion and curiosity about data and looking at pockets that are at the right time of the cycle, I knew that was a winning strategy. And having gone through that experience, I always knew that, the subsequent purchase would be with a buyer's agent. I never considered sort of having a long-term relationship, sort of professional relationship with a buyer's agent. I always viewed it as for property A, go with this buyer's agent, for property B, whoever else is on the market. And when we did the Adelaide deal, it was not only a phenomenal experience in the lead up to the purchase, but it was really that post-purchase support, which continues to this day, right? It was absolutely fantastic. And, not having gone through this too many times myself, just that level of comfort and the confidence, even through the purchase stage, where every single document that comes through is filtered and exactly what I need to know is presented to me with the exact right options that are in line with my future strategy. So I think that level of understanding and that level of care, almost that sort of white glove treatment end to end. End to end is probably not a fair definition of it, because it's start to however long the journey goes, right? So and that's just been a standout experience. And to your credit, you've also built up a fantastic team around you who are incredibly passionate, but equally focused on, again, your client, their goals, their sort of next best steps to help them achieve their financial and otherwise goals.
Yeah, look, that really actually gives me some, good insight, because I've never asked you that one before, man.
No, you haven't.
But on that note, I think what I took out of it, if I understood correctly, was that post-settlement piece and being there for you as more a portfolio investor and your goals around portfolio building rather than just a deal at a time, and combining that research. And that's kind of what's led you to work with us ongoing.
That's exactly right. And just that genuine understanding of, where I want to get to, not just 2 or 3 years down the track, right, but 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years. And you and the team hold me accountable to that. I'm only human. I get distracted by, hey, let's chase this, let's chase that. But then you always bring it back to, no, we've mapped out your sort of financial journey. And this is the wealth creation path that makes the most sense for your, not just where you are today, but where you want to get to. And that's the sort of invaluable value add, if you will, to really keep me honest and keep me focused on that long-term goal.
Mate, on the years ahead, we had a few roadblocks in between, or I wouldn't call them roadblocks, but I called them like bumps in the journey. The world pandemic was one. Yeah. And then, off the back of that, creates a whole bunch of interesting times for many. Now, many people around the country froze, and it's okay. I mean, freezing happens when you're met with uncertainty, met with something at that large scale. That wasn't the case for you. You went on to purchase 2 more properties over the last couple of years, and we've purchased now three for you as a client. What kind of made you feel, I wouldn't call it invincible, but somewhat so mentally focused on your goals that allowed you to just continue on into these next few purchases, even during uncertainty?
Yeah, definitely. And interesting question. I think uncertainty is the one thing that's always going to be there. There's always going to be volatility. There's always going to be talking heads, trying to get you to move one way or another. But for me personally, it was a case of, yes, there might be peaks and troughs along the way, but overall, we kind of know where the flag on the hill is, and we've got a number in mind, and we're working towards that. And it's those periods of volatility that when there are others kind of sitting on the sidelines, that's really where I think personally I'm okay to take those, I won't say risks, but almost calculated moves to kind of keep tracking and keep making progress. Yeah. And I think what really helps is my own mindset, which I know you share, is looking at property and property investments as almost bricks and mortars, bank accounts, and not necessarily getting emotional about the purchase. Purely looking at the numbers, purely looking at the economic drivers of the areas where we're investing in, which is obviously where your team adds an immense amount of value, and having done the research. That just helps give me the confidence to know that, okay, we're buying the right asset, which aligns to our strategy, which, in most cases has future development potential as well. And coming back to that Adelaide property, that's really been the one that's unlocked these opportunities for us, because we haven't had to, definitely don't want to ignore the fact that we haven't really had to tap into our own cash reserves to be able to purchase properties 4 and 5.
Yeah, that's a big piece, right? I mean, yes, the fundamental mindset of doing it whilst that time is there, but actually having the results of a portfolio to action and allow you to kind of take those steps. Mate, one thing that often comes up in the world of professional investing or do it yourself is this concept of, hey, is it worth the fees? do I pay the fees? Now, you've paid fees 3 times over, tens of thousands of dollars, and something we're obviously grateful for to work with you, but also many more fees to come, mate. But with that journey, what's made you feel so comfortable going, mate? This isn't a thing on my mind. Like when I think of this professional versus doing it myself, going to a course or anything of that like, I mean, we've gone through this journey. What's made you feel so comfortable?
Yeah, well, firstly, I thought I was getting the next one wave for doing this. Jokes aside, look, I think fees that everyone's financial situation is different, and I can't speak for others. But in my view, again, going back to why are we doing this, and for me, this is all around building wealth passively and making my income, making my salary, because I'm not a business owner, so I get paid a salary. It's really making that sort of post-tax income from that, putting that to work and making that grow in ways that it will over and above what can happen if it's just sitting in my bank account or doing sort of less rewarding actions. So coming back to your question around fees, whilst it is a consideration, zooming back out to the kind of longer term piece, whether it's 10K or 15K or 20K, whatever the fee is for whatever service you're getting, not just, investor kit as a buyer's agent, but, purchasing a property is going to incur a range of fees. But in the long run, if you are looking at the right asset at the right time of the cycle with the right property on it in the right location, and it ticks all those other boxes, just the amount of time and the research and the focus that goes into identifying that specific buying opportunity when there are hundreds of thousands of options and opportunities available. Like I find that sort of time saving and that expertise that has gone into that, which obviously requires a lot of focus, and there's a lot that goes into it, which your followers and your clients know all too well, right? Like that's fantastic return on investment. So that's it's not a huge consideration because the value and the benefit we get out of that is at least 10x what we're paying for. Don't increase your prices by 10x. That's not what I'm saying.
I was going to say, dude, I was like, this is the perfect segue to that, isn't it? Don't hate me when the new invoice comes in, mate.
Mate. But that's what I mean, right? Like, you pay for good service. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You pay for good service, and you and the team are also aware of that, which is why you're constantly going above and beyond for your clients and your customers.
Mate, on this journey, one thing that came to mind, and something I think has been such a huge, powerful tool that you've deployed, is the power of rentvesting.
Yeah.
You've been able to, scale a portfolio here while still, maintaining the lifestyle of living in some pretty epic places or locations in Sydney. Did you want to unpack what rentvesting has meant for you on this journey and the power of it, and I guess how it's impacted your journey here?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it's not something that happened as a conscious move, but the more the property portfolio grew, the more and more value we saw out of rentvesting. I mean, we started renting in and around the Mascot, Alexandria area, about 2018, and have stayed on because we've seen the benefit of, you pay a relatively low weekly rent relative to the mortgage that's probably on this apartment that we're renting in. We're incredibly close to a whole bunch of lifestyle amenities like beautiful parks, 10-15 minutes away from the beaches, on pretty much the city fringe. We've got the best cafes in Sydney within walking distance. It's a great lifestyle area to live in. And, looking at borrowing capacity, if we were to instead have deployed those funds into a owner occupier at this stage of our careers and our lives, I feel like we would have to compromise on all those lifestyle factors. It's not to say that we're splurging, but we have that, that opportunity to, we see the city skyline from our balcony. We're just a stone's throw away from Coogee, which is fantastic, which, I don't think we'd have that available to us if we were to have gone down the owner occupier route. So it's fantastic, and we've got a very rigorous approach towards bucketing our funds away. As soon as the income hits, it goes to kind of 2 or 3 different buckets. And the way we've structured our investment properties is we're not really out of pocket. We're either breaking even or just slightly negatively geared on all of them. So it doesn't really impact our lifestyle at all.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely agree on those good coffees as well. I know from catching up with you, I'll never be losing weight if I keep hanging out with you out that way, man. That's for sure.
It's all the big constructed mockers for you, mate.
Yeah, mate. I know. I know, Ani, with regards to the journey, another thing that stands out to me, like these things are all things I'm just reflecting on, like, you know, when I think of your journey and what you've achieved. One other thing that stands out to me, which I totally feel is a massive factor to the property investing success you're having, is that you don't, like, it's something that's come up over time. I can remember earlier conversations, like, you know, we had a lot more Q&A on these sorts of areas, but now it's just like, it's not even there. And it's because of the growth you've had in this. And that's to do with treating every city as its own microeconomy. And like, you know, respecting that every city across Australia, whether there's 30,000 people, 70,000 people, or 500,000 or a couple of million, has its own conditions. That has allowed you to the last 3 purchases, we had Albury-Wodonga, we had Toowoomba, we had Adelaide, now Brisbane, Melbourne. And this puts you across 5 distinct cities. Also puts you across Vic, SA, Queensland, New South Wales, right? Or not New South Wales in that condition, but that's 3 different states.
Right.
How did you open yourself up to that journey as time went on? And what do you felt, you know, the power of this has been for the portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, like, that's funnily enough one of the things that I was sold on, you know, even prior to buying properties 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? Like I knew that living in Sydney and working in Sydney, you kind of see all the economic drivers here that push property prices to ridiculous levels that we've seen in certainly last 10 years. My view, again, going back to my sort of analogy of I view these property investments as just another bank account. It's not like, you know, when you're opening up a new bank account, you know, how many times do you actually go into the branch to open it up? You don't need to actually see the product before you buy it, right? And that's kind of been my mindset and approach towards property pretty much from the outset. And also knowing that your dollar can go a lot further in some of these other areas. So that drove my decision to go with a cross-border or a borderless buyer's agent when I did buy that sort of second property in Queensland. And seeing the results from that was that validation that I needed, that, you know what, you're on a good thing here. And when you and I had conversations as well, I knew that a lot of your portfolio was outside of New South Wales for that very reason. In having said that, there's obviously, again, a lot of research that needs to go into finding the right pockets, certainly looking for multiple economic drivers and not just a single economy, such as mining, for example, because, you know, we've heard all the the horror stories sort of around Western Australia and some of the pockets around Australia. So I think it's been something that I've been comfortable with for a while now. And certainly the market having done what it has done over the last 3 or 4 years, we're starting to see the benefit, and hopefully that continues well into the future.
Ani, massive success, mate, on your investing journey today. Thank you so much for putting some time aside here, from, you know, the first example that you shared at the start of the session with the lemon that came up, to transitioning to 4 more purchases in just the next few years to follow. I definitely feel like there's so much ahead as well with what you've done to date and the trajectory you've taken, and also shedding some light on how people need to, you know, remain open to locations, the power of rent vesting, and also most importantly, building your team around you. So, mate, lots of good nuggets in there. Any last tips to share, or any thoughts you'd like to share for those who are on the journey building their investment portfolio as well, that you feel would be of value?
Yeah, I think just bringing that point home again, right? Like, do whatever you can to educate yourselves around, you know, the benefits and the options that are available outside your own backyard. A lot of people that I have conversations with always ask me like, hey, aren't you worried, what if something happens at one of your properties if it's in Adelaide? I said, well, I've got property managers at each one of them. And again, to your question around the fees around the buyer's agency, yes, there's a fee incurred, but it lets me sleep at night knowing that I'm paying them a certain percentage to make sure that, I get the maintenance reports and I get the tax summaries at the end of the year. So there, it's again part of that building a team around you, a trusted team around you to help you achieve your goals and give back to you the most important thing, which is time. So that's probably the biggest bit of guidance that I could suggest is, consider being a borderless investor. It's done phenomenal things, and it certainly stretches your dollar a lot further than it'll go in places like Sydney and Melbourne, kind of the two big economic areas here in Australia. Just opens up those possibilities. And I think the other one, as I said at the start, maybe avoid those kind of house, the off the plan apartments, because there's no scarcity about them at all. So make sure you are looking at the right asset once you've identified the right area. And once again, that's where having a good team around you, such as the folks at InvestorKit, will really help you identify not only the right area, but the right asset. And then, once you've got that first property, second property, and so on and so forth, I think keep a finger on the pulse, just as you're aware of, what your bank balance is doing and hopefully what your super is doing. Get your broker or your banker, whoever it is, get a valuation done every quarter, just to keep a finger on the pulse and know, what's your equity position looking like. My Queensland purchase, for example, for 2 or 3 years, it hadn't done much, and then one quarter, all of a sudden, I saw it had grown by over $100,000 just in that one quarter. So, it's your money. So make sure you know what it's doing for you.
Mate, fantastic tips, and we'll definitely pass them on to many investors who'll be watching this. Thanks again.
Fantastic. Pleasure, mate.